problem with some of these genealogies is some of them have been doctored a little bit to link you to a famous ancestor, for example. So DNA, ultimately, if we proceed to continue with the DNA studies, will help us resolve, has this been ever doctored or has it not? Right? DNA will solve a lot of questions. He goes on to say, Clan Cameron, or Clan Mulroney, or Melanie, children of the chief of the storm. So no longer is it the servant of the storm, because we went from Gilly, a boy, a servant, to Mal, which means chief, or lord, or prince. And what happens is, in Gaelic, I'll come back to that one, in Gaelic what happened was, in ancient Gaelic, the common epithet was Mal. And then it was later on, around the year 1200, this migrated from Mal to Gilly. Gilly meaning servant, and this could mean the chief of the storm, but sometimes it could also mean the servant of the storm. And so the confusion arose when this eventually became Gilly. Everyone assumed that it meant servant, but in actual fact, Dr. Black concluded no, this was actually the chief of the storm or the prince of the storm. Here's the first recorded example of a name that sounds like MacAloney. The question is, was it a true surname or not? Or was it one of these patronymics where you just call yourself Graeme, McJohn, McKenneth, McKean? Or was it a fixed name at this point? Angus Maloney, should actually be Angus, son of Maloney, was slaughtered in Skye in 710, according to the Annals of Ulster. The Annals of Ulster and various other Irish annals were what the monasteries recorded for history in the Dark Ages after the Romans went. And Ireland and parts of Scotland were a light phase during the Dark Ages, where these monasteries recorded history. They recorded the history of kings and battles and princes and you're the heads of the church, the bishops and whatnot. And so anyone that's noted in the Annals of Ulster or any of these other Irish annals was a highly noted individual, a prince or a king or a bishop. And it turns out that in the year 710 in Skye, off the coast of Scotland, there was an Angus Macmillan. And in other words, if you were to anglify that, it would be Angus MacAloney. There was an Angus MacAloney that I was saying, he was some kind of prince. Dr. Black goes on to say another instance of this name. He calls it Melanie as opposed to Maloney. Okay, and I think that here's where we get into religion, by the way. In central Scotland, Presbyterians, Baptists, and whatnot were staunchly anti-Catholic, and they looked down on Irish and Highland culture because that was predominantly Roman Catholic. And so when Dr. Skene translated this Malin fade, he chose to translate it into Maloney as opposed to Maloney, probably because Maloney was a very Irish sounding name, and yet this is an ancient Scottish name. And so he was probably trying to differentiate it from the Maloney name, and he called it Melanie. But I would suggest to you that because our name is MacAloney and not MacAloney, that the correct pronunciation is Maloney as opposed to Melanie, because we are not MacAlonies, we're MacAlonies. He goes on to say that there was a Clan Cameron character called Alan MacAloney. Slightly different spelling again. And he was one of the early chiefs of the Clan Cameron. So we're getting this link into Clan Cameron by this very respected Scottish researcher of Scottish names. In his introduction to the book here, he describes how basically in Ireland and in the west of Scotland, the Highlands of Scotland, with Christianity, if a child was born on a saint's day, then he would be baptized as Malcolm, for example, would be male, Colum, or the servant of Colum as in St. Columba, right? You might have heard of St. Columba, a famous saint. So someone who was born on St. Columba's Day would be called Malcolm, named after St. Columba. So the servant of the devotee of that saint was pronounced Mal in early times, which, if that's a saint, right, the namesake of the saint, the servant of the saint, it turns out that the ancient Celtic word Mal is pronounced very similar to male. Male and Mal means actually chief or prince. And so he says that Mal came from an ancient Celtic word, Maglosh, as in Maloney, chief of the storm, the old Cameron genealogy. And eventually he goes on to say, after the 12th century, Mal gradually got replaced by Gilly, the servant of land. So this is him basically saying, no, we were Mal, the princes, the lords of the storm, but it could easily be confused with the servant of the storm. And therefore, when Gilly replaced Mal, then we picked up Gilly. But what I find fascinating is no MacAloney is called MacAloney today, we're all called MacAloney. We derive MacAloney not from the Gilly word, but from the Mal word, in recognition of the fact that it was my Mal name. So in conclusion, this is a hefty piece to this, in conclusion, Mac, Aloni, because there's some missing letters in there from the original Gaelic, comes from MacAloney, or Maloney, with an AE, and then became an AO, and then become an HAO. You'll see all these different Gaelic spellings. It's just Gaelic is a fluid language and it develops with time, as do many languages. Where you drop the M or NH, and so they're left silent, and so you have MacAloney, MacAloney. So that's your name, MacAloney, servants of the storm, or princes of the storm, recorded in the annals of Ulster in 710. Yeah, so I think that's re-emphasising just what I said. MacAloney you don't see, it's a later spelling, but the pronunciation was not MacAloney, but MacAloney or MacAloney, but not MacAloney, so therefore nobody carries the name MacAloney. This name MacAloney, I don't know if anyone's aware of this or not, but in Sandra and Marg's book, a whole bunch of the MacAloneys in Parsborough said when they were in Antrim, they spelled the name MacLonan, not MacAloney, MacLonan. Turns out my bunch of MacAloneys in Scotland, when we were in Antrim, we called ourselves MacLonan as well. And that's too much of a coincidence. A bunch of MacAloneys in Scotland that left Antrim deliberately changed their name to MacAloney from MacLonan. And you lot changed your name from MacLonan to MacAloney. That's too much of a coincidence. And we'll get into the religious controversy in a wee minute to explain that. It turns out that Dr. Black doesn't have any instance of this name MacLonan in Scotland. It is not a Scottish name. In all the medieval Irish research that I've done, it's pretty difficult to assign it to an obvious Irish name either. There's one combination that suggests it might come from the Scottish name MacLennan, but I don't believe that based on the research that I've done. And I do believe that they have, it's basically MacAloney's that are hiding under a more Irish sounding name. They deliberately changed their name to MacLonan so they wouldn't be identified as rowdy MacAloneys. Right? We'll come on to that a bit later. But the minute they left Ireland and came here, they said, no, we're not MacLonans, we're MacAloneys, and we'll always be MacAloneys. And that's what they did in Scotland. So, I guess in summary, we're sons of the princes of the storm. Around the year 1400, one of our broken-nosed sons, he must have got it right. And the Gaelic for someone with a broken nose is Camshron or Cameron. And so the name MacAloney, which was a proto-Cameron name, when this chieflet with the broken nose got a nickname, Camshron, he was a MacAloney, but from then on his sons were called the Camerons. Right? If anyone knows a Campbell, watch out for the Campbell. Campbell means not bent nose, but bent mouth. Right? So Just remember, Campbell by name and Campbell by nature, okay? Never turn your back on Campbell. Sorry for some Campbell in the audience. So around about the year 1400, a MacAloney comes along, gets a broken nose, and it's called Camshron, and from then on, the clan is not called Clan Maloney anymore, it's now called Clan Cameron. Genetic research will help us resolve one controversy in the Clan Cameron history. Nobody knows which way the name came about. I think people are leaning towards the idea that it was a MacAloney with a broken nose that got that name. But there's also a theory which is pangs of 19th century romanticism when some people were making up exotic clan histories. We were descended from the King of Denmark and all this BS. And it was introduced the idea that the Camerons were descended from some Norman knights who married into the MacAloneys. So one theory is a Cameron knight called Cameron married into the MacAloneys and took over the clan. And the other one is that it was a MacAloney with a broken nose. But either way, the Highland clan Cameron are descended from MacAloneys, whether it was through the heiress that married the Norman knight, or whether it was a broken nose MacAloney. Genetics may well help sort this out, and I'll explain that later on in terms of this male Y DNA. And what it means is that all the MacAloneys here should be carrying the same Y males, right? Sorry ladies, you don't count. But all the males carry this, we should all be carrying pretty much the same Y DNA. That means if the Cameron chief is carrying the same Y DNA as us, as opposed to Norman Y DNA, then it was a broken nose MacAloney. And someday we'll find this out. We're not there yet. I have to go meet the chief and see if he'll spit into a cup for me. Or cut somebody's hair off and steal it for the DNA test. So lots of fun to be had with the DNA because it's scientific and it can really disprove a whole bunch of these romantic theories and turn them into what is the true story. So, anyone look like this guy? This is the current chief of Clan Cameron. Wee bit of a funny story for you. I couldn't in time find a photograph of my big brother Bobby, Robert MacAloney. My big brother Bobby is a spitting image of him. So much so that when I showed my other brothers his photograph, they went, "You're bloody joking." And we all jumped in a car and drove up to Fort William from Glasgow and went up to the Clan Cameron gathering just to have a look for ourselves, right? Now, that might be just a pure fluke, right? Because at the end of the day, Y chromosome doesn't carry an awful lot of information. There's 22 other chromosomes that describe what you look like. And this is only one of 23 chromosomes that describe what you look like. So it could be a pure fluke, but I tell you, my brother Bobby's the spitting image. So my theory is it's the broken nose MacAloney. It's not the heiress that married the Norman knight based on what he looks like. So here's a clan map of Scotland. So you've got kind of Glasgow in this area, Edinburgh in that area. Here's the Highlands up here. This dark blue, that's all Clan Cameron. That's Fort William, the town of Fort William. Inverness is up there. This is called the Great Glen. I don't know if you realise this, but all of this landmass here was connected to Nova Scotia at one point geologically, and then it kind of broke apart, right? So the scenery here is pretty similar to what it looks like back home. Some parts of the Highlands are obviously a bit more mountainous than what you see around here. But for about 1,000 years, the MacAloneys and Camerons were there, and even though many MacAloneys changed their name to Cameron, in the history books you'll see a sept, a branch of the Camerons listed as MacAloney, with that G, right, as one of the main septs of Clan Cameron. McMartin was another sept, and McSorley's were another sept. I don't know if the hockey player McSorley's related to us or not, but maybe DNA testing will tell us at some point. But yeah, so up there, Fort William, and I'm going to show you another map in a minute, but this is a fjord, a sea loch. This is called Loch Linney. That's Lochiel there.